Welcome to Taranaki Foodies with Area 41.
The tastiest food show on the Most FM.
I'll tell you. Hello. Welcome to Taranaki Foodies on the Most FM, the tastiest food show on 100.4 FM. We love to talk about food, garden, hospitality in our beautiful Taranaki, and of course, about the people who are involved in all of the above, and of course, music. We're recording our show live on a Facebook group page. Look for Taranaki Foodies on the Most if you like to peek behind the scenes. In the studio today, Alina Williams, local foodie and the Most FM broadcaster. And our videographer today is Nathan Griffith. Our, and our guest today is quite intriguing, a very philosophical person. His name is Glenn Jeffrey, photojournalist with a massive career, lots of stories, and a foodie. Hello, Glenn.
Hi, Alina. Thank you for having me on this very lovely winter Taranaki day.
Awesome. We are going to listen to the music you had chosen, which is Red Beans and Rice by Michael Franti and Spearhead. Let's listen together. Is it playing?
Would you like me to sing it?
Well, while Glenn was singing this Red Beans and Rice of the airwaves, we will fix it out later on. And in the meantime, I would like to ask, why did you choose this Red Beans and Rice for our first song?
I chose it because it's a great food song, and also I love Spearhead. They're a great band, and Michael Franti is a remarkable musician. I remember photographing Spearhead play at the power station many a year ago, and Michael Franti walked out smoking a very large joint and proceeded to hand it to the audience, and the place went off from there. And it's just, he's such a great guy, and also, it's an interesting dish. It comes back from Haitian slave days, where it came to Louisiana as part of that Creole food, whereby it was eaten on Mondays.
On Mondays?
On Mondays, yes, because on Sundays they had, traditionally, they ate ham. They did a ham roast or that. So on the Monday, they would chop the ham and cook up beans, red kidney beans specifically, and then have red beans and rice. So,
well, before we go any further, I would like to thank you for supporting Vigil for Ukraine, my online project that was actually helping me to keep sane when the official war started. The war was going on since 2014, but people didn't believe in it because there was no media coverage for it. And that is why the role of photographer sometimes is really important, because you go to places where things happening and you just bring evidence. I know it's a time of Photoshop and all the fake news and things like that, but specialists can actually see fake from the real one. And it's important. I mean, this war has been the most Instagrammable in the history of humanity because everyone has a camera. And Elon Musk gave Ukraine those big kind of... Yes, so everyone has internet and it's free. And everyone is a photographer, so everyone can put a video on
the democratizing of photography is a great thing. And to expose war for what it is, which is basically a crime against humanity,
yes,
it's a great thing. And you can see, for example, the 25th journalist was killed in Ukraine in the last 100 days, a French journalist. And it's important. One photograph can speak 1,000 words. We all know those photographs that sit in our minds of world-changing events, and it takes a very skilled person to find that 500th of a second, and that's the skill.
So you visited some hotspots during your career as a photojournalist, and you've been to many countries as a part of a kind of a special mission to tell the story.
I was fortunate. I never had to shoot combat, but just bit of the local mayhem and murder around New Zealand, Sri Lanka for the tsunami, up into the islands for cyclones, that sort of thing. So never that hardcore stuff, which what I saw in New Zealand was was tough enough to deal with at times. But yeah, I huge admiration for these people that go out and risk their lives.
Yeah, sadly, it's happening in 21st century. And you're also involved in the Bake for Ukraine initiative.
Fantastic, yeah.
Tell us about it. We already had Kylie there, and she was quite amazing with her preserves.
What an amazing woman. I heard her on radio in New Zealand. I'm sorry to bring up a competitor, but
we're not competitors, we're all collaborators.
Yeah, and so I touched base with her and offered my services, and I had a bunch of chilies in the garden, so I thought, well, I'll make some chili sauce. Well, I was going to anyway, so brought some bottles, bottled it up, and then got on to the lovely people from Popper's Peppers out on Airport Road there, and they donated 10 kgs of their peppers, so I pickled them to a Ukrainian recipe, and we sold those and made some little labels for them, and yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it's like the other projects I've been involved with. Sorry,
did you call it? Did you give it a name?
I did. I think Peace for Ukraine. I just called it. I just got a generic steal it off the internet label. Warehouse stationery up the road there, just printed them out for free. So I thought, well, yeah, and that's the great thing. Like these things, you go around and knock on people's doors and speak with various businesses. And not a single person that I went to ask for stuff said no. It was remarkable. It's like this place is a very, very philanthropic and very generous place. New Plymouth specifically, it continues to surprise me, the generosity of the people who live in New Plymouth. So, yeah.
Absolutely, you're so right. And I remember that they announced that they started 10 or 12. So I came like maybe 15 minutes or 10 minutes later, and some stuff was already sold, and there were so many people there.
I know. I was on the cooking Mitre 10, Stuart Jones down there. They loaned us amazing barbecue.
Shout out to Mitre 10.
Oh yeah, Mitre 10. Yeah, great guys. And I had this amazing barbecue. If you need a barbecue for a charity event, hit Mitre 10 up for it because it's incredible. And so I just turned out bacon butties, and they were going for like $8, and I had a queue. People just really into it, and I think rightly so. It is a terrible thing happening to the people of Ukraine, and Kylie Newton and Jules Costello up there at No One and Known Wines.
Yes, shout out to Jules Costello, one of our sponsors.
Great guy, and what he doesn't know about brewing, winemaking, you don't need to know. He is just he's a superstar, and those guys just hauled in so many people, and $5,300.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing for
raised. I was very proud of that.
For a quickly organized and such a small place. It's the same amount that people gather in Auckland, Wellington, or somewhere else. And it was just a local generosity. And people I met there, they were also kind of supportive. Well, the same as you. I remember since the war started, you texted me many times. You gave me words of support, which I probably needed then. And thank you.
Certainly did. I remember our conversations, and I can't imagine how you were feeling. Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah.
So your photos were showing in major New Zealand newspapers. Whom did you work for? Tell us.
I worked for, I started my career here in, when was it, 1981, I think I joined the Taranaki Daily News and the now defunct Taranaki Herald, and worked in and just had the most wonderful crew of people. They were great photographers. Well, Merv Gaston was the chief photographer, and they had Jane Dove, excuse me, wonderful photographer from Oakura, beg your pardon, excuse my pronunciation. Claire Ellison, Dave Hallett, Tim Mackerel, just amazing photographers. So, I spent a few years there, went overseas, came back, picked up a job as a photographer on the Auckland Star.
Wow.
Claire Ellison was the deputy picture editor who I've worked with here in New Plymouth, and I just dropped in the office one day and said hello, and she was there. It was like crikey, and so I got a job there. Worked there for about 3 years, and then was offered a job on the New Zealand Herald. So you don't turn that down.
No, this is quite a recognition on its own, isn't it? It's not just a job. It's
exactly, and to be part of basically the best photographic team in Australasia. I mean, they were up as good as the photographic team of the Sydney Morning Herald back in the day, and there were like 40 photographers on there, and we had 14. So moved to the New Zealand Herald, and I just had a wonderful time. I went down to Rotorua with the amazing journalist Sandy Patterson. Spent a year there with her, working together. We had incredible adventures. We formed a lifelong friendship. She's the godmother of my daughter, Sophia, and and then moved back to the New Zealand Herald. Worked as a photographer, general news photographer, and but interestingly, I'd always been a foodie. I'd always cooked.
Yes.
My mum, before I was 5 years old, Mum and I, when I was at home, and my older brothers were at school, I'd bake cakes with my mum. So I was like 3 or 4 years old, baking with my mum in the kitchen. So I've always loved it. And then my first girlfriend, Brenda Haverhill, and her wonderful family of 3 younger sisters, I used to bake their birthday cakes and things like that.
This is something really touching about guys doing it. It's
and I just love food. I love to go out to. I remember taking Brenda out to our first meal together to the old Auto Lodge grill, and remembering they had frog's legs on the menu, bear braised frog's legs. I thought, well, I'll be adventurous and show up to this woman I'm trying to impress that I'll eat frog's legs. And she was
That's an easy way to impress a female by cooking or bringing her a good restaurant. So it's
true.
It usually works normally.
Yeah, the way to a woman's heart is through her stomach.
Yeah. That's funny. So you've been working for so many different newspapers and outlets. What was the most remarkable shorts you ever made? What was the most scary and maybe most funny?
Well, I think probably the most the craziest day I've ever had would be in Italy in 2005, when I was there to cover the 60th anniversary of the Battle of Monte Cassino. And
wow,
it was
in Italy.
In Italy, yeah, and was there with about 20 former soldiers from the terrible Battle of Monte Cassino in 1944, and one of the, we were Michelle Hewitson and I were covering. We basically were following this one guy, Sergeant Bill Marsh. He was a sergeant of a platoon that landed in Salerno, and over the fight up to Monte Cassino, and then through the Monte Cassino up to it's the Gustav line, but anyway, I can't remember. But anyway, we followed him, and his best mate was Eve Otto. He was a bombardier, so he was an artillery. So on the Tuesday, we'd all gone up to Rome and had lunch, and all the old diggers were supposed to be taken to the Sistine Chapels. And anyway, they had a long lunch. A few of the media decided they'd go and see the Sistine Chapel. I thought, I'll buy Bill a tea towel, because he was getting tea towels for his wife to bring back, all from all the places we went. And so I thought, oh crikey, right, I'll buy Eve St. Christopher as a present. So that night I gave them to Bill and Evo, and Evo said, "Oh, are you Catholic?" I said, "Yes, yeah, I'm Catholic." Yes, yes. He said, "Oh, you've been confirmed in the Catholic Church?" Oh, yes, yes, yes. He said, "When was the last time you went to Mass?" And I went, "Oh, dear."
I just wanted to give you a present.
I remember. He said, "Oh, I go every day." And I said, "Well, look, give me that St. Christopher back." And so on the Friday, we went up to the monastery with Helen Clark, who was Prime Minister at the time, and then hopped into this crazy motorcade. You know, people talked about her speeding down in South Canterbury, but this thing was run by the Carabinieri of Italy. And so anyway, we get to the Vatican, we go up into the Pope's library. Here's Pope John Paul II, here's Helen Clark and Peter Davis sitting there. So you're up there, you're full of adrenaline. You know, it's like, is my gear going to work? It's like, okay, right, well, yeah, everything's right. So click, 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 click. You just machine gun it. No fancy lighting, no nothing. You just machine gun the whole thing. And that was all over. And so Helen Clark and Peter Davis walked out. And so I said to one of these, because I asked Eve for the St. Christopher back, and so I asked one of the bishops whether Il Papa would bless the St. Christopher. He said, "Put your gear down here, come with me." He walked me up to Saint Pope John Paul II, and I said, "Excuse me, Papa, will you bless this?" And he went, "In nomine Patris Spiritus Sancti, over the St. Christopher." And
so your photographing gear was blessed.
No, I was blessed. This
St.
Christopher was blessed. So that was all over. We hoofed it down. It was 12 o'clock in Italy, which was midnight here. So I was on deadline. I was a pool photographer. So immediately I had to get this stuff to New Zealand. In 2005, it's a fraught process back in the day. So I lay down outside in this great courtyard and started working, trying to get this thing on my laptop sorted and pushed through to New Zealand. And the Swiss guard came up to me in his clown suit, you know, the funny suits they wear, and he had his hand on the sword. He goes, up, this is Pope's palace. Do not. So I stopped. So look, sorry, man, I'm just trying to carry on, trying to get this connection and get the picture back to New Zealand, and got it through. And then he followed me around until I hopped on the bus to leave. I had offended him, and so I took the St. Christopher back to Eve, though I had a few that night, and I'd come back from dinner where I said, "Oh, here you go." And I told him the story of the St. Christopher and gave it to him. And I got pretty
special, isn't it?
Yeah, I got Christmas cards from him about that St. Christopher for 10 years.
Wow.
And it was, so that was probably the most special day that I've had. There's been other remarkable days, but
you just mentioned Helen Clark, our previous prime minister, that you were part of the group that were going together to Italy. You met a lot of powerful women through your work.
I do.
Have you ever been starstruck? Do you know?
Starstruck? That's an interesting one. I think, have I been starstruck? I think the thing is that when you're old, you probably, I think, starstruck. Now, just to break those two words, and star and struck, Bjork is a real favourite of mine. And so I was assigned to photograph her in Auckland Airport when she came in for a big day out. And so I saw her coming through from customs, coming through in the departures there of Auckland Airport. And I could see her, she looked up. And so she went that way. And I went, ran around and sort of click, click, click. Hi, Bjork. Welcome to New Zealand. Click, click.
She's Norwegian.
Icelandic. And I took a couple of frames. She didn't want to know me. I had her laid a CD in my bag. I was hoping she might sign it for me. And I was that big a fan of this woman. And I turned to walk away, and all of a sudden I heard this crash and a rip, and she ripped my shirt off and fell to the ground.
Wow! She ripped your shirt.
So I thought I was going to be famous for my work as a photojournalist, but apparently I'm most famous out there in cyber and in the world for the photographer that has shirt ripped off by Bjork. So that's probably.
It's really funny.
Star and struck. Struck. So,
I believe that when you're a photographer, you have this beautiful way to hide behind the camera. So you don't need to look in the eyes.
Yeah, you do. It is a shield. You do. You have to use the camera as a shield for some of the things that you're required to see to be able to tell people stories. And there's been times in dark rooms when I've burst into tears about what I've just seen or witnessed or dealt with. But I think the most important thing about being a photographer is empathy to your subject, be it a plate of food or a person or an animal. that empathy is critical to finding good photographs.
Wow, this is a beautiful word. And just reminder to all of our listeners that we're talking to Glenn Jeffrey, photojournalist and a foodie, and we are Taranaki Foodies on the Most FM. So you came to my Korean cooking class several years ago, and you took some amazing photographs.
Thank you. It was a fun night. I enjoyed it. The first time I met Nathan, and really had time. I mean, I've been a big fan of Korean food for a long, long time. Melissa Lee, the MP, is an old friend of mine, old journalist friend of mine. So I experienced Korean food.
She's quite switched on. She's amazing.
Oh, she's an incredible. You know, we don't agree in our politics, but we love each other as people. So
it's the beauty of democracy. You don't have to agree.
Exactly.
You can argue, and you can bring the truth to the surface.
That's
so, do you like Asian cuisines? Because you're
I love Asian food. You know, and I think Korean food is a real fave. I've got Wong Bok in the garden for my next lot of kimchi.
Wow,
kimchi
smells in your
it does. Yeah, it's everything's fermenting, festering. But apparently they're good bugs for your stomach. So.
Yes, they are. Yeah. And you can make a soup with kimchi. You can add it to something else. Or can eat it. Oh my gosh, I started to salivate.
I find that one of my favorite ways of doing, like, for example, I'm widowed, so I live alone. So if I buy a piece of steak, I'll cook it, and then I'll cut it in half. I eat half of it one night, just sort of, with meat through veg, and the next night I'll just let it rest in the fridge, and then slice it really, really, really thinly, and then do like fish sauce, some lime juice, some little bit of soy, some sugar, and some sesame oil, and then next night I'll eat that with a bowl of rice, some kimchi, and that.
Oh, yum! This is so nice.
Yeah. And the great thing about it, at the end, when you've got all the juices left from the kimchi, all the juices left from the marinated steak dish, you pour them all together, mix them up, and you have this delicious.
It's always unique, isn't it? Because we are, as creative foodies, we always slightly change the recipes. We just know what to expect from each ingredient and things like that.
Exactly, yeah. Knowing what to expect from each ingredient. I mean, I think one of my favorite ingredients is cardamom. I mean, the queen of spices. It's it is just, I mean, it's sweet, it's savory, it's got almost an umami sort of thing to cardamom. Just one pod, and when you cook your rice, it's just.
Have you ever tried coffee with cardamom?
Invariably so. I'm pretty sure.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. It goes with so many things.
So, at the moment, what is your favorite cuisine, ingredient, technique, or maybe something, or a dish?
Good question. I think I'm eating a lot of more the sort of the Indian at the moment, because it's getting towards colder weather, and we're making. I'm loving making curries. I love to roast the spices to make a masala, to use that. I mean, we're so fortunate with the large Indian community here in New Plymouth, and especially a lot of people from Kerala, and the Kerala
is a foodie province.
Yeah, province south of India, very, very much into their seafood, a lot of waterways. Kerala means land of coconuts. A lot of coconut.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of coconuts used in their cuisine, but pepper is used as the main spice rather than chili of the northern regions.
So it's not that hot.
Yeah, but it's still hot. It's still that pepper hot, but a different way of heat. And and I love to make a curry from scratch, and just to grind the spices, make the paste. Cook the. I think one of the main things is to get those onions cooked down
properly.
And also one thing that I've just learned, and I've started to use is to, when you introduce your spices to your onions, to actually with your ground spices to actually put water and mix it into a
In the
little
paste.
slurry. So when you actually cook your spices, you don't burn them, which can be an issue if you go in too high heat with your spices.
And depending on
Yeah,
oil, of course.
Indeed, yeah. But I mean, Indian cuisine is so huge, so many people have
Very versatile.
It's
too.
very, very versatile. So, yeah.
So,
But other than that, Thai and Vietnamese. Vietnamese
all
especially.
Asia.
Yeah, I love that that Vietnamese way they use really fresh, sprightly flavors that really lift.
Yes, all
especially
the
food.
grains that they use.
Yeah.
So I'm foodie myself, and I like to cook. But to be honest, what I love to cook and what I love to eat is not exactly the same. so when you choose cooking for the love of cooking, or cooking what you love to eat, what would you kind of? Is there any difference for you, or is it quite connected for you because you live on your own?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, one of the great pleasures of when I retired from the New Zealand Herald, and my past wife was a clinical psychologist, so I was able to, just stay at home and look after the girls and look after the garden. And one of the things was developing menus around what was in the garden. We had a sizable vegetable garden, but also, to the whole process, because at the time I had a nice little fishing boat, and I used to hunt a lot, had a place where I could go and whack a deer every fortnight, and go out and put the long line down, have a fish, bring some fish back. And so I had this whole lifestyle that was involved in production, gathering, production, and serving of food to my family. And yeah, I mean, food to me is about love, and the way I see it is, if I'm cooking for myself, it's self-love.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm cooking because I deserve to be fed this, and I will. So, but I'll hunker down to a bunch of baked beans and some toast. But
on certain days we all need that simplicity of it. Simplicity. Yeah. So, is there any food that you can eat at any time of the day or any day of the week?
Oh,
is there something that you're kind of totally comfortable with?
Yes. I mean, I'd probably say marmalade.
Marmalade.
I just think marmalade.
You have a sweet tooth.
Yeah, I do have a sweet tooth. I think marmalade is probably one of the. I mean, it's so. I mean, it was because sugar used to be so expensive. Okay. It was the food of the rich, and now it is. Marmalade's so easy to make. I've really got this thing off Carly Newton about preserving, and I'll she's great, because I'll just flick her a little DM and she's, hey, how should I deal with this? And she'll photograph the page of her cookbook and say, oh, this is my recipe. Like, oh, cracky. So I haven't had to buy her cookbook yet, but one of these days.
Awesome. Okay, so we're coming close to the end of our show. Do you have a signature dish that you kind of cook with the closed eyes?
Oh, yes, I do have a signature dish, and that would be Thai som tam salad, and with chicken satay, with this is the thing that I would cook for myself. So yeah, a chicken satay done with chicken tenderloins, a homemade peanut sauce, satay sauce, and then som tam. And so I mean, green papaya, you can't get it here, so I just use carrot. And so yeah, I'll just do that, and it's really simple. I mean, it's such a great dressing: fish sauce, palm sugar, lime juice.
Okay, this is how you cook it.
And you mix equal quantities, and then taste it too.
I use tamarind for the sauce.
You use tamarind? Great. Okay,
yeah,
which gives you
the citrus,
the citrus thing that lime juice. Oh, interesting.
I'll have
to try that.
Yeah. I said that this was the last question, but it was wrong. I have another question. What do you think is New Zealand true Kiwi food? Something that signifies New Zealand in the whole world, because I don't think that something that we kind of have it here actually is known around the world. I personally think
we don't.
I personally think that eggs Benedict, because wherever you go to any cafe or restaurant, there is always eggs Benedict in several varieties.
Right, yeah, that's the sort of national dish. Yeah, explain it. Yeah, I mean, you know, we could always go with the mince and cheese pie, which
Yeah,
is,
that's right.
you know, safer communities together here, blow on the pie. But yeah, explain it. It's interesting. I would like to say, you know, I'm going a bit flash, but you know, crayfish on the barbecue. I mean,
that's really good.
I don't
a
think
good
you would
image of New
find
Zealand.
any New Zealander that would turn down half a crayfish done with garlic butter on the barbecue.
Oh, that's
I mean,
awesome.
seriously, I mean, could you do any better than that?
No, you can't.
No.
Thank you very much for coming. This is the end of the show. Now we're going to take some selfies and post them on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh dear. I hate having my picture taken. That's why I became a photographer.
That's okay.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's been lovely. Really enjoyed it.
Tune in to 100.4 FM every Saturday at 4 p.m. Remember, there is a live recording of this interview online on Taranaki Foodies on the Most FM group page on Facebook. Meet you next Saturday at 4 p.m. Bye-bye, my gourmetarians.
Peace and love, people.